She called the flight attendant and pointed at me like I was a criminal. People like him don't sit in first class. The whole cabin went quiet. I was already seated. Seat 2A, window, calm, my small black bag under the seat, boarding pass still in my hand. I had arrived early, said nothing to anyone, just nodded politely and sat down. Then she walked in, perfect hair, big sunglasses, loud heels, the type who thinks the plane waits for her. She stopped beside my seat and looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. "There's been a mistake," she said to the flight attendant. "This section is first class." The attendant smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. It is." She leaned closer. "Exactly." Her eyes moved over my jeans, my simple jacket, my worn boots. "I think he's confused." I looked up slowly. "I'm not." She let out a short laugh. "Sweetie, people like you don't pay for seats like this." Some passengers shifted uncomfortably. A man across the aisle lowered his newspaper. A young couple in front of us turned around. The flight attendant checked her tablet. "Sir, your boarding pass, please." I handed it to her. She scanned it, nodded. "He's in the correct seat, ma'am." Karen's smile disappeared. "That's impossible." She snatched her own ticket and pushed it forward. "I paid full price. I demand you recheck that." The attendant kept her calm voice. "You're in 3 Celsius. Karen blinked. "That's not first row." "No, ma'am." Her face turned red. She looked back at me. "Switch seats." I didn't move. "I don't think so." Her jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "I paid for my." "You paid for yours." She crossed her arms. "You probably used points. Or someone felt sorry for you." A few people gasped softly. I stayed quiet. That made her angrier. She stepped into the aisle and raised her voice. "This is unacceptable. I will not sit behind him." Behind me, someone whispered, "Wow." The flight attendant tried again. "Ma'am, we need to finish boarding." Karen pointed at me again. "Either move him, or I'm filing a complaint. I know the airline board. I know how this works." There it was. Fake authority. "I've had people removed before," she added proudly. I leaned back in my seat, calm, watching her. "Go ahead," I said quietly. She didn't like that. "You think this is funny?" "No." She stepped closer. "Tell them what you do." I looked at her for a second. "Why'd?" "Because I can tell you don't belong here." The cabin felt smaller now. I could feel eyes on me, judging, waiting. I slowly reached into my jacket pocket. Karen smirked. "See? He's nervous." But I wasn't pulling out a wallet. I pulled out a small black leather holder. I didn't open it. I just held it. Karen rolled her eyes. "What is that? A fake badge?" That's when the pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're closing the cabin door shortly." The attendant leaned toward Karen. "Ma'am, please take your seat." Karen shook her head. "Not until this is handled." She turned to the passengers behind her. "Are you all okay with this? Anyone could just walk in here and pretend." Pretend. Interesting word. I stood up slowly. The cabin froze. Karen stepped back half a step. "You're finally moving," she said proudly. "No," I said calmly. "I'm just done listening." I opened the leather holder. The badge inside caught the cabin lights. Gold. Official. Real. Karen's smile faded. The flight attendant's eyes widened. I spoke clearly, but not loudly. "Federal Air Marshal Service." The words landed heavy. Silence. Complete silence. Karen blinked. "That's not real." I flipped the badge around so she could see it clearly. Then I showed my ID card. The attendant straightened instantly. "Sir." A man across the aisle muttered, "Oh man." Karen's face went pale. "You're joking." "I don't joke about federal law." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You accused me loudly," I continued. "You caused a scene. You delayed boarding." She swallowed. "You also just suggested I don't belong here." Her voice came back, but weaker. "I didn't know." "That's the point." The attendant stepped closer to me. "Sir, is everything okay?" I nodded. "It is now." Karen tried to laugh. It sounded forced. "Well, this is a misunderstanding." "No," I said calmly. "It wasn't." She looked around for support. Nobody helped her. Nobody defended her. The same people who were quiet before were now watching her, judging her. The young guy across the aisle said softly, "Guess you picked the wrong seat to fight over." A few people chuckled. Karen's pride was cracking. "I want to speak to your supervisor," she told the attendant. The attendant's tone changed slightly, respectful, but firm. "Ma'am, You may take your assigned seat, or we can have security assist. Karen froze. Security. She looked back at me. And that's when I saw something change in her eyes. Not embarrassment, anger, real anger. You think this is over? She'd whispered to me so only I could hear. I met her stare. It already is. She leaned closer. You embarrassed me. You did that yourself. Her lips tightened. She grabbed her bag and walked back to 3C. But she didn't sit quietly. I could feel her eyes burning into the back of my head the entire time. The cabin door closed. The plane began to push back. The attendant leaned down slightly near me and whispered, "Thank you for handling that calmly." I nodded once, but I wasn't relaxed. Because I've learned something in this job. People like her don't let things go. They escalate. And as the engines roared louder, I noticed something strange. Karen wasn't looking at me anymore. She was texting. Fast. Angry typing. Then she stopped. Looked up. And smiled. Not embarrassed. Not defeated. Smiled. That's when my instincts kicked in. I slowly scanned the cabin. 2 rows behind her. A man I hadn't paid much attention to before suddenly avoided eye contact. Baseball cap, hoodie, hands shaking slightly. And he wasn't reading a book. He was watching her. She gave him the smallest nod. Almost nothing, but I saw it. My pulse slowed instead of racing, because now this wasn't about ego. This was something else. Karen looked forward again. Calm now. Too calm. As the plane lifted off the runway, she leaned back comfortably, like her plan was just getting started. And that's when I realized something chilling. She never cared about the seat. She wanted the attention. She wanted me focused on her. While someone else stayed invisible. And 30,000 feet in the air. Invisible is dangerous. The seatbelt sign was still on when the man in the hoodie stood up. Too early. Too sudden. The plane had just leveled off. Engines steady. Cabin lights dimmed for the evening flight. Most passengers were relaxing now. Drinks coming out. Laptops opening. But he didn't look relaxed. He moved toward the front like he was confused. Karen didn't turn her head. She didn't need to. Her fingers tapped once on the armrest. Slow. Controlled. I unbuckled quietly. "Sir, please remain seated." The flight attendant called gently. He ignored her. That was enough. I stood up smoothly, stepping into the aisle before he could pass first class. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly. He looked startled for a second, then annoyed. "Bathroom. It's behind you." He hesitated, just for half a second. But that half second told me everything. Karen sighed loudly from behind. "Oh please, don't start profiling people now." I didn't even look at her. "Sir," I said to the man, my voice low and firm, "let's talk for a moment." His jaw tightened. "I don't have to talk to you." "You're right," I said quietly, "but you do have to sit down." The cabin was watching again. Karen leaned forward in her seat. "This is harassment." I finally turned my head slightly. "Mom, stay out of this." Her eyes flashed. I knew it. Power trip. The man in the hoodie suddenly tried to step around me. "Dad, move." I blocked him easily. Not aggressive, just solid. "Sir," I said again, softer this time, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." His hands were shaking now, sweat forming near his temple, and then I saw it. Not a weapon. Something smaller. A phone. Screen open. A timer running. Counting down. 2 minutes. My chest didn't move. My face didn't change. But inside, everything sharpened. Karen saw my expression shift. Her smile faded. "What is it?" she whispered. The man panicked. He shoved past me suddenly. Passengers gasped. The flight attendant screamed. I grabbed his arm before he could reach the cockpit door. He twisted hard, dropping the phone. It slid across the aisle. Karen stood up halfway. "What's happening?" "Sit down," I barked. Authority. Not loud, but sharp. She dropped back into her seat instantly. The phone stopped near 1A. Timer still running. 1 to 34. The man swung his elbow, catching my shoulder. I barely felt it. Adrenaline does that. I forced him against the bulkhead gently but firmly. "Listen to me," I said into his ear. "Is there anything on this plane I need to know about?" His breathing was wild. "No. No." "Then why the timer?" "It's not mine. Lies usually come fast." "Too fast." The cabin was silent except for the hum of engines. Karen was staring at the phone now, her face pale. The timer hit 102. I nodded toward the flight attendant. "Take it up carefully." She hesitated. I kept my grip on him. "Now." She grabbed the phone, looked at the screen. Her face changed. Confusion. Sir. It's just a stopwatch. I extended my hand. She gave it to me. I looked closely. It wasn't connected to anything. No app open except a simple timer. No messages. No signal activity. Just counting down. The man swallowed. I use it for anxiety. It helps me breathe. I studied him. His pulse. His eyes. Fear. But not the kind that comes from guilt. The kind that comes from panic attacks. I looked around the cabin. Passengers terrified. Karen trembling now. The timer hit 0. Nothing happened. Just a soft beat. The man broke down. I can't fly. I hate flying. I set timers so I can count until it's safe. The tension drained slowly. But something didn't sit right, because Karen wasn't relieved. She was angry. Again. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You attacked him. I restrained him. I corrected. You humiliated me. And now you're assaulting passengers. There it was again, making it about her. Always her. The man in the hoodie looked confused now. She told me to walk up here. The cabin went silent. Karen froze. What? I asked calmly. He pointed weakly toward her. She said, if I caused a distraction, she'd help me get operated. She said you were harassing her and needed to be exposed. A wave of whispers moved through the cabin. Karen's mouth opened slowly. He's lying, he told me. The man continued, voice shaking, to start something, so people would record you. My eyes locked onto Karen. Her confidence was gone now. You're insane, she snapped at him, but her voice cracked. The young guy across the aisle held up his phone. Actually, I was recording. Karen turned white. The passenger pressed play. Clear audio. Her voice. Just walk up there. Make him look aggressive. I'll handle the rest. The cabin erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone said, unbelievable. Karen stood up again. This is out of context. No. I said quietly. It's very clear. She pointed at me wildly. You embarrassed me. You flashed your badge like you own the sky. I don't own the sky. I said, but I protect the people in it. The pilot's voice suddenly came through the intercom. Air Marshal, report to cockpit. He had heard enough through the internal alert system. I handed the man gently to the attendant. Get him water. Then I faced Karen one last time. You tried to create panic on a federal flight, I said calmly. That's not drama. That's a crime. Her lips trembled. You can't prove intent. I held up the phone with her recorded voice. The viral line came out before I even planned it. You picked a fight over a seat and ended up fighting federal law at 30,000 feet. Nobody laughed because it wasn't funny. It was real. Karen sank into her seat, hands shaking now. But as I turned toward the cockpit, she said something under her breath, soft, almost lost in the nose. You don't know who my husband is. I paused, slowly looked back, and that's when I noticed something chilling. Her boarding pass on the armrest. Different last name, different seat printed underneath. 3C wasn't even hers. She wasn't supposed to be in first class at all. And suddenly, this wasn't just about ego. This was planned. And we were only halfway across the country. I didn't react right away. When someone drops a line like that, you don't know who my husband is, they expect fear. Or respect. Or at least hesitation. I gave her none. Instead, I picked up the boarding pass from her armrest. Seat 3C. Name. L. Whitmore. I looked at her. That's not Karen. Her face didn't change. Too controlled. It's my maiden name, she said quickly. The flight attendant leaned in. Ma'am, your ID during boarding showed Karen Whitlock. Different name. Different story. The cabin started whispering again. She snapped, are you seriously interrogating me over a typo? I didn't answer her. I turned the pass over. Something else caught my eye. The barcode looked slightly smudged. Not torn. Not wrinkled. Smudged. Like it had been printed recently. Did you print this at home? I asked calmly. It's none of your business. It is now. Her jaw tightened. The man in the hoodie, still shaken, spoke again. She told me she flies all the time. Said upgrades are easy if you act confident. Upgrade. So that was part of it. She hadn't been moved to first class. She moved herself and expected no one to question it. I signaled to the attendant quietly. Pull the original manifest. She nodded and walked quickly toward the galley. Karen stood up again, voice rising. This is harassment. I paid for my seat. Then you won't mind verification, I reply. She leaned close, whispering sharply. You think a badge makes you untouchable? No. I said, it makes me responsible. Her eyes burned. Behind her, passengers were no longer confused. They were watching her, judging her. The young guy with the phone was still recording. She noticed. Turn that off. She snapped. He shook his head. Nope. A middle-aged woman across the aisle added, you tried to cause panic. Karen pointed at her. Stay out of this. The attendant returned, tablet in hand. Her face was different now. Not polite. Serious. Ma'am, she said slowly. Seat 3C is registered to Alora Whitmore. Different birth date. Different ID number. The air shifted. Karen didn't blink. That's me. The attendant shook her head. It's not. Silence. Then Karen laughed. Actually laughed. You people are unbelievable. I switched with someone at the gate. Who? I asked. She hesitated. There it was again. Half a second. I don't remember his name. I held her gaze. Tried. She looked around like she expected backup. No one helped. The hoodie guy spoke quietly. She told me she knows airline executives. Karen shot him a look that could cut glass. You're making things worse, she hissed. I stepped closer. Ma'am, show me your ID again. She crossed her arms. No. That one word changed everything. Because refusal in this situation isn't attitude, it's probable cause. I kept my tone level. You're currently under federal investigation for interference and possible fraud. This is your chance to clear it up. Her breathing changed. Faster. But her eyes. Still calculating. She slowly reached into her purse. Passengers leaned back instinctively. She pulled out her wallet. Opened it. Then froze. I saw it immediately. Her hands were empty. No ID. She flipped through slots quickly. Too quickly. It was here, she whispered. The attendant's voice dropped. Ma'am, did you board this flight without valid identification? That's impossible. Karen snapped. I went through security. I watched her closely, because now something else was forming. Either she was lying, or someone had just outplayed her. And I don't ignore that possibility. The cabin lights flickered slightly as we hit light turbulence. Karen looked genuinely shaken for the first time. My purse was in the overhead earlier, she said suddenly. You placed it under your seat, the attendant replied. Karen blinked. No. I put it up. You didn't. I remembered clearly. She shoved it under the seat when she demanded I move. So why say that? Unless she expected something to be missing. Opened every pocket, I said calmly. She did. Lipstick, phone, credit cards. No driver's license, no passport. The attendant looked at me. Sir, I nodded once. Then I made the call. Cockpit, lock protocol. The pilot's voice responded immediately. Confirmed. The reinforced cockpit door sealed fully. Standard safety. But now the mood inside the cabin changed from dramatic to serious. Karen's voice cracked. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything. I reply. Your actions are. The hoodie guy whispered. She told me she does this all the time. Karen turned sharply. Shut up. He continued, anyway. She said airlines never check twice. The young passenger recording muttered, guess they did today. Karen looked like she wanted to scream, but instead, she smiled again, and that scared me more than the anger. You're all so dramatic, she said softly. It's a boarding mix-up. Nothing more. Then she looked directly at me. You think I planned something? I didn't answer. Because my mind was moving through possibilities. Fake seat, no ID, encouraging distraction, trying to expose me on video. But why? Unless she knew I'd reveal myself, unless she wanted me identified publicly. And then it hit me. The young guy's phone. He wasn't just recording her, he had been recording me since the badge moment. I turned to him. Show me your screen. He hesitated. Why? Because this just became bigger than a seat argument. He slowly handed it over. The recording was still running. Comments already flooding in. Live stream. Thousands watching. Title. Air Marshal harasses woman on flight. My stomach went cold. Karen's smile widened just slightly. There it was. That was the play. Not the seat. Not the panic. Exposure. Federal Air Marshals do not operate for attention. We operate quietly. Anonymous. Invisible. And now my face. My badge. Broadcast live. I turned off the stream immediately. How long? I asked him. Since she told me to record. He admitted. Karen leaned back, relaxed again. Freedom of speech. You coordinated it, I said quietly. She shrugged. You wanted attention, she replied. Now you have it. The plane suddenly felt smaller, because this wasn't random entitlement. This was calculated humiliation, public pressure. If my identity spread online, my assignments could be compromised. Future flights, future operations, families protected quietly, all at risk. I looked at her calmly. You didn't just target me, I said. You targeted every flight I'll ever step on. For the first time, she hesitated, because now she realized something. This wasn't just social media drama. This was federal obstruction. The attendant whispered, Sir. What now? I didn't raise my voice, but the words were firm. Now we land with law enforcement waiting. Karen's eyes widened. You're overreacting. No. I said. You escalated. The cabin was silent again, but something unexpected happened. An older man to Rose's back stood up slowly. Gray hair, calm presence. I've been quiet, he said, voice steady. But I work in federal prosecution. Karen stiffened. He continued. Interference with aviation security carries serious consequences. Karen looked like she had swallowed ice. You can't arrest me for talking, she whispered. No. I said. But I can for fraud, identity misrepresentation, and coordinated interference. Her phone buzzed suddenly. She looked down. Her face drained of color. What is it? I asked. She didn't answer. I stepped closer. On her screen was a message. Delete everything. They're tracing it. My eyes lifted slowly. Who's they? She shook her head. I don't know what that means. Lied. The hoodie guy looked confused. I thought this was just to make him look bad. Karen snapped. It was. I studied her. Now I saw it clearly. She didn't expect it to go this far. She expected outrage, online sympathy, a viral clip. Not federal protocol. Not locked cockpit doors. Not a prosecutor to Rose's back. Turbulence hit again, stronger this time. The plane dipped slightly. Passengers gasped. The timing felt almost cinematic, but real, too real, because in that moment, the captain's voice came through, tense. Air Marshal, we have an issue. My pulse shifted instantly. What kind of issue? Anonymous alert sent to flight operations. Bomb threat. Citing first-class disturbance. The cabin went ice cold. Every head turned toward Karen. Her mouth opened slowly. That's not me. I believed her. Because this reaction was different. Real fear. The older prosecutor whispered. This just escalated. Yes. It did. Because now, someone else was playing. And the live stream had been running long enough for someone to act. I looked at the young guy. How many viewers? He swallowed. 30,000. That was enough. Enough for anyone watching to send a fake threat. Or worse. I turned back to Karen. You wanted attention, I said quietly. You got it. Tears formed in her eyes. I didn't call anything. I know. And that's when she realized something horrifying. She wasn't the smartest person in the room anymore. She was bait. The cockpit voice returned. We're diverting. Nearest airport. 20 minutes. Panic started spreading through the cabin. Whispers. Prayers. Tight seatbelts. The hoodie guy looked like he might pass out. I raised my voice just enough. Everyone stay seated. Remain calm. This is precautionary. Karen grabbed my sleeve suddenly. I didn't mean for this, she whispered. I gently removed her hand. Intent doesn't control consequences. Her tears fell now, real ones, but I couldn't soften, because 30,000 feet above ground. Emotions don't matter. Protocol does. The young guy asked quietly. Am I in trouble? Yes. I said honestly, but cooperation helps. The older prosecutor added calmly. Very much. The plane began descending slowly. Cabin pressure adjusting. Silence heavy. Karen leaned back, shaking. And I finally understood the full picture. She thought power meant volume. She thought attention meant control. But real power is quiet. And when you expose something meant to stay invisible, you don't just embarrass one person. You wake up systems. As the runway lights appeared below, red and blue flashing vehicles already lining the tarmac, Karen whispered one last thing. I just didn't think someone like you would matter. I looked at her calmly. That's the mistake you keep making. The wheels hit the ground hard. Emergency crew surrounded the plane, and as we rolled to a stop, I realized something deeper. This wasn't about first class. This wasn't about ego. It was about a woman who believes status decides worth. And tonight, status just landed her in federal custody. But as officers boarded the aircraft, one of them leaned close to me and said quietly, "Sir, this might be bigger than her." I looked at him. How? He showed me his phone. The bomb threat message. It wasn't random. It referenced my badge number, which had only been visible on that live stream, which meant one thing. Someone watching wasn't just trolling. They knew what they were looking at. And suddenly, Karen wasn't the only problem on this plane. She was just the spark. And somewhere out there, someone else had been waiting for fire. The officer's words stayed in my head. This might be bigger than her. They escorted passengers off row by row, calm but controlled. Bond dogs, tactical units. No chaos. Just heavy silence. Karen was cuffed gently but firmly. "This is insane," she whispered, tears on her face now. "I didn't threaten the plane, I know," I said quietly. "And I meant it." She was reckless, entitled, manipulative, but she wasn't smart enough for what just happened. On the tarmac, flashing lights reflected off the aircraft's metal body. News vans were already parked behind the barricades. 30,000 viewers had turned into a national headline in under 20 minutes. The young guy who live streamed sat on the stairs shaking. "I didn't think." "That's the problem," I reply. "You didn't." Karen looked smaller now. Not powerful, not loud. Just a woman who thought humiliation was a game. Federal agents separated us. One of them handed me a tablet. They had already traced the bomb threat. Not random. Not overseas. It came from inside the United States. And it came from an account that had been monitoring federal aviation movements for months. My jaw tightened. This wasn't about Karen. This was about exposure. The live stream had shown my badge clearly. Paused. Zoomed. Enhanced. Someone used that moment to send a threat detailed enough to force a diversion. Which meant one thing. They were testing response times, testing procedure, testing me. Karen saw my expression change. "What?" she whispered. "You wanted attention," I said calmly. "You just gave dangerous people exactly what they needed." Her face drained of color. "I didn't mean." "I know, and that was the difference. Intent doesn't erase damage." The prosecutor from the plane approached us on the runway. "I've already spoken to Field Command," he said quietly. The live stream clip was reposted across 3 major platforms in under 10 minutes. "How many downloads?" I asked. "Thousands." That meant my face was already circulating. My cover, compromised. Karen began crying again. "I was just tired of people like him, acting above everyone." I looked at her steadily. "I wasn't above you. You flashed your badge like you were. You challenged my right to sit in a seat I paid for." She had no answer, because that was the truth. This entire chain reaction started with one sentence. "People like you don't sit in first class." She judged. She assumed. She attacked. And when she was wrong, she tried to destroy. But she misjudged the wrong person. Agents approached with update. "Threat sender identify," one said. My chest tightened. "Who?" He turned the screen toward me. A name I recognized. Not personally, but professionally. A domestic extremist under investigation. Someone who had been watching Federal Air movements quietly. The live stream exposed something they'd been trying to confirm for months. They weren't targeting Karen. They were targeting federal presence on civilian flights. And she handed them proof on a silver platter. The agent looked at me carefully. "You're off rotation effective immediately." I nodded once. No emotion. But inside, it hit. Assignments paused. Identity flagged. Relocation possible. Because someone wanted to play social media hero. Karen shook her head slowly. "I didn't know." "That's the point," I said. "You don't need to know how dangerous something is to make it dangerous." They walked her toward a federal vehicle. Before the door closed, she looked back at me. "Why didn't you just move seats?" The question was almost innocent. Almost. I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear. "Because I didn't fight for this country to be told where I'm allowed to sit in it." She broke completely then. Not because of anger, not because of arrest, because for the first time, she understood. This wasn't about comfort, it was about respect. The young guy who live streamed approached nervously with an agent beside him. "I'll testify," he said quietly. "You will?" The agent confirmed. He looked at me. "I'm sorry." I studied him for a second. "You wanted views," I said. "Next time, Want responsibility? He nodded quickly. Hours later, after debrief, statements, federal coordination, I sat alone in a quiet airport office, phone buzzing non-stop. News alerts, clips, opinions. Half the country calling Karen a villain, the other half debating authority. But almost nobody understood the real threat. They thought the story was about racism, or class, or ego. But it wasn't. It was about exposure of security layers that are meant to stay invisible. The agent who first warned me stepped in. They picked up the threat suspect. That got my full attention. How? He reposted the clip bragging about forcing a diversion. Arrogance. Same disease. Different person. Was this planned? I asked. He shook his head. No direct link to her. She was just the match. He was the gasoline. I leaned back slowly. One careless sentence, one public stunt, and suddenly federal counter-terror units were activated. Karen thought power meant volume. The live streamer thought power meant attention. The extremists thought power meant fear. They were all wrong. Real power is quiet discipline. Weeks later, I stood in a different airport. Different city. Temporary reassignment. No badge visible. No first-class seat this time. Coach. Row 18. I didn't care. A little girl across the aisle dropped her stuffed bear. I picked it up and handed it back. She smiled. No judgment. No status. Just kindness. Her father nodded at me. Thank you. Simple. Normal. The way it should be. As the plane began boarding fully, I noticed something on the news screen near the gate. Karen Whitlock, charged with federal interference, identity fraud, and coordinated obstruction. The live streamer faced penalties too. Fines, probation, mandatory testimony. The extremist, facing federal prosecution. All because someone believed people like you didn't belong somewhere. As I buckled my seatbelt quietly, an older woman sat beside me. She smiled warmly. First time flying? She asked. I smiled back. Something like that. She laughed softly. The engines started humming. No drama, no spotlight, just another flight. And I thought about that moment in first class, when she pointed, when she judged, when she tried to make me smaller. People like her believe worth is visible. Clothes, seats, titles, but they never see the truth. The strongest person in the room is usually the quietest one. As we lifted into the sky, I looked out the window. Clouds stretching endless and free. Freedom doesn't shout. It doesn't brag. It doesn't demand attention. It protects, silently. And somewhere in a federal holding cell, Karen finally understood something she never had before. The sky doesn't belong to first class. It belongs to those who protect it. And next time someone looks at a stranger and says, "People like you don't belong here," maybe they'll think twice, because sometimes the person you're trying to push out is the one keeping everyone safe.